One calm word from Obama shook Trump harder than any debate ever could. And the way Trump unraveled on live TV made the entire country stop and watch. The lights were almost blinding. Rows of cameras pointed toward the stage, red tally lights glowing, ready to beam every tantrum into millions of living rooms across the country. The town hall had been built as one of the biggest of the year, and you could feel it in the air. People weren't just watching. They were waiting, restless, hungry for a moment that would define the night. President Donald Trump walked onto the stage at a community center auditorium in Columbus, Ohio. Chest forward, chin tilted slightly higher than usual. The applause started strong, but it wasn't the thunderous roar he liked. A few people rose to their feet, others clapped from their seats, and some just held their phones up, already recording. The moderator, a veteran journalist named Stephen Radcliffe, sat at the opposite end of the stage, shuffling through cards. He had hosted dozens of these before, but tonight felt different. The country had been rattled by a string of crises: economic instability, rising tension in overseas conflicts, and bitter fights in Congress. People were already tense, and now the nation's two most prominent political figures, one current president and one former, were circling each other without even being in the same room. Then came the moment early in the event. Radcliffe leaned forward, glasses low on his nose, and asked the question everyone at home had been waiting for. "Mr. President," he said, his voice steady, "earlier this week, former President Barack Obama was asked to give his assessment of your administration's handling of the crisis. He didn't give a long explanation. He just used one word: chaos. What do you say to that?" The word hung in the air like smoke. You could almost hear the audience lean forward in their seats. Trump's jaw shifted. His eyes darted across the crowd, and he let out a sharp breath through his nose. His lips pressed together in a thin line, as if he were fighting to hold something back. Then the storm came. He leaned into the microphone, his voice louder than it needed to be. "Chaos? That's what he said? Obama, let me tell you something. Nobody has done more for this country than me. Nobody. We were handed a mess, and now they want to call it chaos. Give me a break." The words spilled out fast, his tone already veering off course. Some members of the audience clapped, mostly in the front rows where his supporters sat. Further back, people stayed quiet, their eyes locked on him, not with admiration, but with the kind of attention people give when they're watching someone teeter on the edge. Radcliffe tried to steady the moment. "Mr. President, if I may," but Trump wasn't letting go. "This is typical. The media loves him. They love anything he says. He can say chaos, and suddenly it's a headline. Meanwhile, we're doing incredible things. Things no one thought possible. They don't want to talk about that. They want to talk about one word. One word. Can you believe it?" The rant had begun, and the audience could feel it. People at home felt it too. Twitter notifications buzzed across phones. Clips were already being cut and shared by producers. Backstage, Obama's single calm word was being set against Trump's thunderous volley of sentences. The contrast was undeniable. What made it more powerful was that Obama wasn't even in the room. He didn't need to be. His voice had traveled from an interview days earlier into this hall in Columbus, where it was now shaping the entire conversation. Somewhere in the third row, a young college student whispered to the person beside him, "It's like Obama dropped a match and Trump setting the whole house on fire." The person next to him didn't answer. They just nodded slowly, eyes fixed on the stage as Trump's hands sliced through the air. With every angry word, the camera zoomed in, catching every twitch, every flush of red across his face. The president wasn't answering questions anymore. He was fighting ghosts. Obama's calm, the media's headlines, the audience's silence. And that was only the opening minutes of the town hall. But the real story had started long before Trump walked onto that stage. It began with Obama's single word, spoken days earlier, and the way it spread across the country like wildfire. It hadn't come from a speech. It hadn't been shouted from a podium or posted in a long, angry thread online. It came in the middle of a calm, measured interview. Barack Obama was seated on a worn leather chair inside a modest studio in Phoenix, Arizona, speaking with a local news anchor about leadership, responsibility, and the challenges of governing through crisis. The anchor, a woman named Julia Reyes, had been walking him through a series of questions about global instability and domestic unrest when she asked, If you had to describe the current administration in one word, what would it be? Obama didn't rush. He leaned back slightly, his hands folded in his lap. He let the silence stretch, almost as if he wanted the audience to think alongside him. Then, in that even, deliberate tone that had carried him through countless addresses to the nation, he said, "Chaos." That was it. One word. No further explanation. Julia blinked. The silence after his answer lasted longer than the pause before it. It wasn't awkward, it was heavy, like something profound had just been dropped on the table. She tried to prod him. "Could you elaborate on that?" Obama only gave a small smile, that familiar half-smile people remembered from his presidency, and replied, "I think the American people know what I mean." The clip aired that same evening on a regional broadcast, but within hours it had traveled far beyond Arizona. A young producer clipped it and uploaded it to Twitter. The post exploded, gaining hundreds of thousands of views in just a few hours. Then CNN picked it up, followed by MSNBC within a day. Late-night hosts in Los Angeles and New York were replaying it, each building entire monologues around that single word. Jimmy Fallon joked that one word from Obama got more attention than hours of Trump speeches. Stephen Colbert leaned into the irony. Obama speaks for a few seconds and Trump spends minutes yelling about it. Even conservative commentators couldn't ignore it. Some tried to dismiss it as cheap wordplay, while others admitted, grudgingly, that it had struck a nerve. But it wasn't just pundits. Ordinary people latched onto it online. On Instagram, a teacher from Des Moines posted a photo of her chaotic, paper-strewn classroom with the caption, "My students after recess." Obama was right. On TikTok, teenagers cut together clips of Trump bar shouting during press conferences, interlaced with the word chaos in bold white letters. Memes, GIFs, and parody videos multiplied by the hour. It was the simplicity that gave it power in a nation tired of long speeches and endless debates. Obama had boiled his critique down to one word that everybody understood. It didn't need explanation, because people could fill in their own examples. The mixed messages during crises, the revolving door of staff in the White House, the late-night tweets that sent markets tumbling. Whether you supported Trump or not, you knew what Obama was pointing to. The aides took notice almost immediately by the second-day advisors, were circulating reports, showing the word dominating headlines across platforms. Cable news panels ran split screens, Obama's calm face on one side, bold letters spelling chaos on the other. Every outlet was milking it. One staffer privately admitted to a colleague, "It's like he branded us with it." Trump, of course, didn't take it quietly. According to insiders, when the clip was shown to him on Air Force One, he slammed his hand on the armrest and shouted, "That's all he has. Chaos. Pathetic." But the frustration was written all over his face. He knew, deep down, that one word had done more damage than an hour-long speech ever could. Back in Phoenix, Julia Reyes gave another interview about her sit-down with Obama. She admitted she hadn't expected that answer and was surprised by how quickly it took off. It felt key, a moment where less really was more. He didn't lecture. He didn't rant. He just trusted people to connect the dots, and connect the dots they did. By the time the town hall in Columbus was announced, Obama's word had become a constant drumbeat. Protest signs carried it. Editorial cartoons printed it. Even bumper stickers appeared overnight, big block letters spelling chaos across them. It was no longer just a comment. It had become a rallying cry. So when Stephen Radcliffe brought up that word during the town hall, he wasn't just quoting Obama, he was channeling everything that had built up in the days since. For viewers at home, Obama's voice lingered in the background, calm and unshaken, while Trump's reaction would show whether he could rise above it or collapse under its weight. But as soon as Trump started speaking, it became clear he couldn't let the word go. He had to fight it, and in fighting it, he gave it even more life. The auditorium in Columbus wasn't particularly large, but it felt charged, like too many emotions crammed into one space. Rows of folding chairs stretched back toward the walls, filled with a mix of supporters in red caps, undecided voters curious to see the president up close, and critics who had come more for the spectacle than the politics. Television crews lined the sides, lenses trained forward like watchful eyes that never blinked. Every cough, every shuffle, every burst of applause was magnified under the hot stage lights. Stephen Radcliffe. If adjusted his glasses again, his fingers brushing the stack of cards on the small table between him and the president. He had prepared questions about policy, about healthcare shortages in small towns, about foreign negotiations with Iran, about labor strikes rippling through the Midwest. But now, after Trump's first eruption, everyone knew the town hall wasn't going to be about policy. It was going to be about one word on that stage. Trump rocked back slightly in his chair, tugging at his suit jacket as he leaned into the microphone. His face was flushed, not just from the heat of the lights, but from the weight of the question he couldn't shake. Every time he mentioned Obama, his voice spiked higher. Every time he said chaos, his hands sliced through the air, as if cutting the word into pieces might lessen its sting. "Look, Obama had years," Trump barked, pointing toward the audience. "Years. And what did we get? Nothing. Weakness. Total weakness. And now he says chaos. He should be ashamed. I built the strongest economy this country has ever seen. Ask anybody. We were respected again. We were winning again. Then we get hit with things nobody could have seen coming. Nobody. And suddenly it's chaos. Ridiculous. Just ridiculous." The audience was split. Near the front, a middle-aged man in a navy polo clapped loudly, nodding along with every word. A few rows behind him, a young woman with glasses whispered to her friend, "He still hasn't answered the question." "Another." Our group sat stone-faced, recording the entire exchange on their phones. Radcliffe tried to steer the discussion back toward substance. "Mr. President, if I could redirect for a moment, what specific measures are you taking to address the shortages in hospital staffing across the Midwest?" Trump waved his hand dismissively. "We're doing everything. Absolutely everything. Doctors, nurses, they love me. They tell me all the time. Nobody has done more for healthcare workers than I have." Nobody. But do they talk about that? No. They want to talk about Obama. They want to talk about chaos. That's all they want. The moderator's lips tightened, but he held his composure. The audience, however, was visibly shifting. Some leaned forward, thrilled by the spectacle. Others sat back with folded arms, almost embarrassed by what they were watching. The tension wasn't just in what Trump was saying, it was in how far he was drifting from the original question. In the wings of the stage, White House staffers shifted uneasily. They exchanged quick glances, some whispering under their breath, knowing the night was spiraling into exactly what they had feared. A spectacle that would dominate headlines for days, for all the wrong reasons. Then it got worse. Radcliffe cautiously pushed again. "Mr. President, just so we're clear, are you saying former President Obama's assessment is unfair?" Trump's eyes narrowed. He leaned forward so close to the microphone that the audio technician winced at the distortion. "Unfair? It's not just unfair, it's dishonest. It's a disgrace. He knows it. The media knows it. And you know it too." His voice boomed across the hall, echoing off the walls. "They want to paint a picture of chaos because they can't stand that we're winning. They can't stand it." Some applause broke out, scattered and uneven, but just as many people sat in silence, and silence on live television under hot lights is louder than applause. Radcliffe didn't interrupt this time. He simply let the president talk, the cameras catching every flicker of frustration across his face. At home, the imbalance was impossible to miss. Obama had needed only a calm pause and a single word. Trump was now deep into a tirade that hadn't touched a single policy issue. In living rooms across the country, families exchanged looks. Some shook their heads, others laughed nervously. Some simply stared, trying to reconcile the image of a president unraveling under the weight of one word. Backstage, moderators, producers, and journalists all knew the same thing. This was no longer about healthcare, foreign policy, or even the town hall itself. It was about how a calm, deliberate word could corner the most powerful man in the world. But the boiling point hadn't been reached yet. What came next would show just how far the president was willing to go to fight a word he couldn't control. As the early part of the town hall slipped by, it became clear the evening was no longer a exchange of questions and answers. The auditorium had turned into an arena. Every sentence swung like a punch. Every pause felt like an opening for another strike. Trump leaned back in his chair, but there was no relaxation in his posture. His body was tight. His gestures were sharper than usual. His voice carried a force that made even the back rows feel like they were being shouted at. This wasn't persuasion anymore. It was frustration, raw and restless, searching for something to hit. "You know what this is," he snapped, pointing toward the cameras at the back of the room. "This is the media doing what they always do. They take Obama and treat him like he's perfect. He says one word, chaos, and suddenly it's gospel. But when I build the strongest economy, when I secure our borders, when I keep us safe, they ignore it. They don't want to hear it. They never want to give me credit." His words echoed through the hall. Supporters in the front rows jumped in with cheers, but the middle sections grew restless. A woman in her 60s, clutching a folded program in her lap, muttered to her husband, "He still hasn't said what he's going to do. He just keeps talking about Obama." Her husband grunted softly, eyes never leaving the stage. Radcliffe, still composed, tried again to pull the conversation back. "Mr. President, people watching tonight are looking for reassurance. They want to know what specific steps are being taken to guide the country out of its current difficulties." Trump cut him off. "Specific steps? We're taking all the steps, the best steps. Everybody says so. Governors, mayors, they call me all the time. They thank me. But you won't report that, will you? Because you're too busy asking me about Obama. Always Obama. It's like you people can't get over him." He wasn't finished. He leaned forward again, his voice rising as if he weren't speaking to Radcliffe at all, but directly to Obama himself, as if his predecessor were sitting just a few feet away. "You want to say chaos? You left us with chaos. Weak foreign policy, terrible trade deals, broken health care. I fixed it. I cleaned up the mess. But no, he gets to sit on TV, say one word, and I'm supposed to answer for it. It's pathetic." The outburst drew mixed reactions. Some in the crowd clapped again, desperate to show support. Others sat frozen, faces caught between discomfort and disbelief. Still others raised their phones, silently capturing footage that would soon flood timelines and group chats across the country. The moderator opened his mouth, but Trump plowed ahead. "I'll tell you what chaos looks like. It's years of Obama doing nothing for this country. That's chaos. People couldn't afford their bills. The world didn't respect us. And now he has the nerve, the audacity, to use that word about me. Not going to happen. Not while I'm here." His voice filled the hall. But so did something else. Tension. Everyone in the room could feel it. They were watching something spiral. The President of the United States, live on national television, wasn't defending policies anymore. He was defending his pride. With every extra sentence, the balance tipped further. The one word Obama had dropped so effortlessly had turned into a storm of Trump's own making, each angry remark adding fuel to the fire. In the front row, a high school student with a press badge leaned toward a classmate and whispered, "He's proving the point. He doesn't even realize it." His friend kept filming, eyes wide, as if witnessing history. Messy, loud, raw. Backstage, Trump's staff looked increasingly anxious. One advisor rubbed his forehead with both hands and whispered to another, "He's feeding the word. Every time he says it, it sticks harder." The other nodded, eyes locked on the monitor. They all knew they couldn't stop him now. Not here. Not in front of the cameras. Meanwhile, in living rooms across America, families watched with very different reactions. Some shouted at their screens, defending him. Others sat in quiet shock, their confidence in his leadership shaken by the sight of a president unraveling in real time. Radcliffe finally let the rant run its course before speaking again. His tone was deliberately calm. "Mr. President, for the sake of the viewers at home, let me ask again. What would you say to the people who are genuinely afraid right now? Afraid of losing their jobs, their savings, their future?" Trump exhaled sharply and shook his head. "I'd say they should be thankful they have me instead of him. Because if Obama were in charge, there wouldn't be a future to be afraid of." The words landed heavy. Not reassuring, not steadying, just combative. In that moment, the line between leadership and anger blurred. The town hall was no longer just a political event. It had become a stage where composure and chaos were colliding, and only one of those would linger in people's minds after the cameras stopped rolling. But before the night was over, the reaction from the crowd itself would make the cracks in Trump's approach even more obvious. The town hall had become less a question and answer session and more a test of endurance. How long the president could rail against a single word before the room itself began to push back. And push back it did. The divide was no longer subtle. It was written on faces, expressed in shifting postures, carried in the uneven mix of claps and murmurs that rose and fell with every outburst. In the first few rows, supporters stayed locked in, hanging on every phrase. A man in a red windbreaker clapped so hard his palms turned pink, shouting approval. Whenever Trump attacked Obama, a woman beside him waved a small American flag pulled from her purse, her smile unwavering. These were people who had come to cheer, and they weren't going to let the mood slip, but deeper into the crowd the atmosphere shifted.